Maybe let's start by the traditional way of doing things. We normally have to set to say where are we heading to. So the first point of departure is for us to look at the outline of this workshop or the presentation that I'm going to do. I would definitely look quickly into the outcomes for this workshop. And then we move into looking at the dimensions of action research. Thereafter, then we look at the types of action research. And then we move into the meat, which is a participatory action research. I would also try to provide some definitions to that effect. Then we also share the examples of participatory action research projects. Maybe when it comes to the end, we can also reflect on action research by colleagues. Anybody who is here in the process, in the project, in the workshop, needs to start from somewhere. Unfortunately, I am from the teaching industry. So as teachers, when we start, we normally start with a question. So the question would be then, before we start with the action research itself, to look into things such as the question of what is research. Now, I know a lot of people would have different views of saying what is research. And research in this context would then mean a process of searching. But this searching process is not just an easy one. It's just an easy one for us to look into that kind of practices. So maybe to simplify it or to put the questions in a very simple way is to say, when we do research, we kind of searching any place where you want to go to. You need to search where the place is located. However, what the research process we're referring to, we mean you have to search twice. The one way of searching twice is to maybe start by searching in a kind of, we say, more theoretical, where you look at literature, where you look at what people have been saying, where you look at things that you see. Then you search for the first time in that area. You look into what people are saying, more so if you have a problem that you are searching or something that you want to really address. Then the second part of the research would be you search empirically. So one can search empirically in the sense that you will then look at what people are saying. So the first search was your theoretical one, or what we call more in concepts, trying to understand certain words, concepts. Thereafter, then you move into talking to people, or also using instruments that would enable you to get what others on the field are saying. So that's the second search. Now, having set the tone for that, I think it is proper and correct for us to set the outcomes of the workshop upfront. So for this workshop, the main purpose, if this workshop is a failure, it's when people are not able to explain or understand what is action research, and also to understand what is participatory action research. So that's the main outcome of the workshop. We're saying if you do not understand that, then it means the workshop that we had is a failure. The second outcome that we'll be looking at is to examine the application of action research. So if after this workshop, you are not able to apply action research or participatory action research to solve real life problems, then it means this workshop, it's a failure. So we normally judge the workshop on the basis of what we do, the outcomes thereof. And then the last aspect, I would want you to set it as a kind of measure of our success in the workshop. If we are not able to evaluate action research projects, then it means all this practice that we're doing, it's a failure. We didn't achieve our objective. So it is important and imperative for one to start from there. Now, as I promise you, the first outcome of this study or this is to look at the dimension or the outcomes or the intention is to look at the dimension of action research. Now, dimension of action research can only be seen in one person. Anybody who is involved in action research or the practitioners as researchers in the process want to reflect and do a self-reflection. In other words, once you begin to do action research, the intention is for you to have a clear reflection of yourself. You look at how you plan, you question your planning. Remember, planning is an intention to achieve an outcome. Now, maybe your planning might be wrong. One has to also question that. So you reflect from time to time. Was my planning correct? Where did I go wrong? So the one aspect that a person, when we talk about action research, and I want to emphasize this one, action research intentions is to look at yourself only. And in so doing, you then have to plan. And then in the planning, you find out to say, what is it that needs to be done to improve my self-practices, my planning? You can also look at your own planning to say, is my planning correct? And then you look into the process of reflecting on your planning. Remember, planning, once it has been done, it must be in writing. And then once you execute it, you can see whether it's things going according to plan or am I failing in terms of achieving that. So action research would be best place to enable one to change or to improve the self-practices that one is doing. So what am I saying? I'm saying action research, it's more based for an individual. Whether you are a nurse and you want to look at how, as a nurse, I am treating my patients, or how, as a nurse, I am planning towards improving somebody's health. And then you look at yourself. So action research is more intentions or has a dimension of looking into self-reflection. Then the second part is also action research is done by professionals. For example, you look at a professional development purpose to improve your profession. Now you'll understand that as different people in different fields, we have our professions and code of practices. Let's say you are a police person or you are a policeman or a woman. In that case, you also need to look at your practice. How do you do your work? You reflect on your own work to say, as a police, am I servicing the community correctly? As a soldier, am I serving my country correctly? So all these things would then allow you more best once you do what we call action research. the one aspect that action research has, it has got what we call political intention. Political intention. For example, you can be somebody who's working in the community. Then you work towards generating democratic processes to enable groups or members of the society to lead to a social change. We all know that there are so many ills in the society. So once you've got that intention to say, I would want to see things, changing in my society. For example, we've got a water crisis. There are many ways that you as a person in the community can do to have what we call self-empowerment processes. In so doing, you can even look at what is our behavior? How do we behave in terms of utilizing public goods? For example, a tap. There are people who can open a tap and leave it as it is with running water. There are people who can connect to the grid or electrical grid without even seeing the consequences. Their intention is just to say, as long as I can survive. So one can begin to be involved in the process of saying, I am going to work towards improving the practices that we have in the community. So that is very much important. There are overlaps, and that may be presented in action research study. So having said that, let's quickly look into types of action research. Now, according to scholars identified here, action research can be referred to as action science. Some people refer to it as action science. Now you can hear the word action. It's not just a science, a quiet science. It's a science that has got actions as the driving force. Now, the part that we're going to look into today, which I want to emphasize, it's your participatory action research. So that's another type of research that we call participatory action research. Some people have even taken it to a higher level. They call it critical participatory action research, especially those researchers who are involved in what we call transformative paradigms. So there's participatory action research, and there's also what we call community-based participatory action research, where you're now not just looking at the participants, but at a community where you do everything to look at issues of the participatory. Then there's another one that we call action learning. This is also another type of action research, which is called action learning. As you do your work, you look and study your actions. Did I talk correctly? You reflect from time to time. So maybe let me summarize this by saying, with action research or participate any type of action research, there are three pillars. The first one is you recognize, you look and see the problems. The second one is that there's another pillar that we call you kind of plan. Whether you plan collectively, but there is also involvement of you as a person or people. Then the third pillar is what we call reflection. So the three P's that would drive action research would be those three pillars, where you kind of identify a problem, Then you move into recognizing and looking at your actions. Then lastly, you look into reflection. So from time to time, you reflect. You go back and check, where did I go wrong? So action learning, it's another process of doing that. There's another one that they call appreciative inquiry. There are so many good things that we don't talk about. If you look at our newspapers or you look at newspaper headlines, there's no newspaper headlines which can run with a story that says, so and so is graduating. We have somebody in the community who is graduating. We appreciate that kind of process to say somebody is getting married. So people are more focused on bad news. So action research or action learning, it's more looking at, appreciative inquiry. It's more looking at good things that we have. You can even appreciate the music. We know about the stories of your Makazi, who has got so many good things to tell. And those are kind of appreciative inquiry where you can look into what is the good thing that comes out of the process in your research. Then there's called another action type of action research, which is living theory. They say living theory, it is a kind of lens that would be involved in action research, but in the process, they are looking at good things that are happening. So this is more a kind of research which is not problem orientated or talking about problems, but more kind of saying, what is it that we can learn in life? What is it that you can learn from other people? So there's a last one, which is the one that is also more closer with participatory action research. It's called participatory action leadership and action research. It's called abbreviated as PALA. Others call it participatory action research and action learning. So this one has got participatory action leadership and action research. This is another sister of it that is called participatory action learning and action research. So that is that in a nutshell. Now let's go to the real issue which I've promised to look into. Participatory action research and how scholars see it. There's a number of scholars who have come up with definition of what is actually participatory action research. They describe participatory action research as a form of action research. It's one of them in which professional social researchers operate fully in a kind of collaboration with the members of the organization in studying and transforming those organizations. So action research has got things that we can talk about, which is your collaboration. Those are the key. And then the action becomes one of the aspects that they actually do. And then the intention is also to transform or to change. So that's how the definition goes in terms of participatory action research. Furthermore, it is an ongoing organizational learning. In other words, once you start with participatory action research, it does not end. It is a process that goes on. It goes on in a spiral manner. You'll see when you talk about the steps in doing action research. It is one aspect which would then take that kind of format where we look at action research from those different perspectives. Furthermore, it is an ongoing organizational process and research approach that emphasizes co-learning. So because it's participatory action research, you do not just learn alone. You learn as a collective. You learn as a participation or as a process of you being involved. You're learning from each other. For example, let's just look into trying to quickly venture into how other people would do. Remember, when you bring in people together, you might not know each other. So in a participatory action research, they would use tools such as team building exercises, where the team begins to look at each other to say, hey, wait a bit, who are we? Because we're from different background, we've been socialized differently. They come together, but they are now glued together because they must work together. So there is co-learning. So everybody, there's no here. Actually, the good thing with participatory action research is that in participatory action research, the principal researcher demystify the power that they have. In other words, being a practitioner of participatory action research, there's one thing that a person must be aware of, is that in life there are always power dynamics. Power issues will always be with us. However, in a participatory action research, for it to be successful, the participants must demystify the power in themselves. So it changes you, it actually humbles you. It's a kind of research where people would conduct research in a very humble manner. So before I continue, I think I must continue with the definition and then we'll take it furthermore to say if there's any questions, then I can take them if there's a possibility there. Now, participatory action research, some scholars explain it as action research that shows participatory and has got democratic processes concerned with developing practical knowing in pursuit of a worthwhile human purpose. So here the scholar emphasizes democratic process. Now, not everybody is familiar with this concept, democratic. In other words, democratic process would always emphasize the will of the people or the will of the collective. But it doesn't mean that if we are in a democratic process, we'll always agree on everything. However, this type of research is a research where the practitioners or the participants or the co-researchers in the research process works being consciously aware of democratic processes where everybody is seen as equal and where everybody will be given a fair chance to share their knowledges. In action research, there's no one. There's no this one who knows better than the rest. In action research, there is a kind of intention to say, hey, what is our purpose? What is it that we want to achieve as a collective? So there's a common goal. So there's a common goal that would then address issues of humanity. If, for example, you do action research, and just to prick maybe questions that you might have on this definition. In action research, people would work as a collective to solve a person without looking for money. Now, in African culture, especially in Setswana culture, there is this thing that we call letsema. Letsema, it's a process where people come together, being invited by the person who wants to do something. For example, let's say you want to build a house. And then you tell people in the community, hey, I want to build a house. And I would be able to work with you as a collective without you expecting any payments. So people would say, okay, let's go and help you. We can go out there and help you. Or somebody says, I have a garden, I want to clean my garden. And he tells the people to say, I have an intention to say on this particular day, I want to take, some means to clean my garden. In the process, then people would come and say, okay, we are here to assist you. And they don't expect any payment. The only thing that, in African culture, they would share. For example, the person who is heading the project would then have to organize some kind of meals for the people, because you can have people, working the whole day without, providing them with water, food, taking care of all those small things. So this definition is actually tapping there to say, participatory action has got a democratic process. It's not your decision alone. Yes, you can be the one that comes with the idea, and then you share it to the people. Then the people say, we can help you. And in so doing, work together towards that kind of approach. Then the approach is actually grounded in participatory worldview. Here they bring together action and reflection. They do their actions, and in the meantime, they also reflect on the actions to say, we have done this. How did we do this? Did you do it correctly, or was anybody hurt in the process? What is it that you can do to assist the process to become a success? So theory and practice is actually brought together. So you don't just say theories such as Voto or Ubuntu. You actually practice humanity by taking care of somebody else. So you can see that, although I don't want to bring that debate, but action research has got more kind of socialistic thinking or African thinking, where people come together and work together, and the participation with others to pursue a practical solution. So in action research, it's not just to say we're talking about the problems. To say we are experiencing people with nyaope in our communities, and our young youth are every day, pushing themselves to a distraction. But rather, they come up with a practical solution. What is it that we do in order to assist this person not to continue with the nyoping things? So pressing concerns to people. In other words, it's more kind of a practical solution to issues of pressing concerns to the people. What troubles people? Recently, we have questions about South Africa. There's a lot of questions that we're asking. We are asking questions as to whether, are we a femicide society? Are we a femicide society in the sense that in South Africa, we had experiences in which women and children have been killed for no apparent reasons. We've seen that in universities, girl child would be killed unnecessarily so, and all those kind of things. So participatory action research is actually one of the researches that would address those issues, where there is more general flourishing towards individual or persons and the community. So you as a member, remember, we are all from communities, different communities. However, we are all human beings. So there's something that we have in common. We are human beings. Yes, you can be an individual, but the fact that individual is a human being. And therefore, you're also from a community. So action research, in this kind of definition, the emphasis is more on, flourishing of individual persons and the community. You kind of bring them together, where they kind of blend together. To take the definition furthermore, participatory action research is based on social or community action. It's a social action. The kind of community project that you see or people that we know about, in the past we had people called action and treatment campaign. These were people who were concerned about that time, that period when a lot of people were dying in our country because of HIV and AIDS. So they started to come together, and then they were challenging government to say this issue, it's not an issue within our control as human beings, but you as government must be able to assist. So here there's a shared ownership. The aim is to transform, is actually to change the whole situation. If we can reflect, for those who know, in the past, especially with the coronavirus pandemic, there was a lot of people dying. So there were people who started to do projects which brought them together in order to say, let's change and reverse the situation, because COVID was something which was generated, we know, and then they started to study to find out what is this thing that we're dealing with. And then they started to come up with solutions. So we know a lot of people, especially in the African culture, people who bring in your lengana. They would be drinking lengana in order to solve their problems. Others would say, no, use this, Bluecom tree. Others would say, bring in this. So people were coming up with ways of trying to deal with these issues. So the one aspect which I've indicated earlier is that PAR focuses on issues of power. They are quite aware that there is issues of power that will always stay with us. Now, you know that there are people who have different views. Where once those people who are from certain communities where there is what we call the kingdoms, the chief. Chief is also treated as a special person, I've seen these funny things happening even in some of our charismatic churches, where a pastor would be moving, trapping on the bodies of people to enter the church. So you can see that that person is actually abusing others. So power makes you consciously aware to say, you cannot allow that. That's a human being that you are actually trampling on. So participatory action research has got those kind of intentions where participation and decision is one of the aspects that drives the whole process. So there's also kind of definitions and claims that scholars are talking. They say PAR highlights collaborative knowledge. Collaborative knowledge in the process meaning knowledge for production with others to craft critical interpretations and reading on the world, which are accessible, understandable to all those who are involved in an actionable way. So that is basically what participatory action research as a definition would be focusing on. So maybe just a quick summary before we move further of participatory action research, and then if there's questions, I would ask the doctor to just indicate to me if there is any questions on the charts, then we take it from there. To summarize, participatory action research is distinct that one, it is driven by the participants. This is a different kind of research. It's a research which is driven by the participants. It's not driven by the principal researcher, but it is driven by the collective, a group of people who have a stake in the environment of the issue that is being researched. These are the people who want to find more about that. They would move into looking into all those aspects, particularly looking at aspects which deal with the problem at hand. The second thing that we can identify from the summary, it offers a democratic model, or we can say it offers a democratic framework of who can produce, own, and use knowledge. Now, this is a high debate that a lot of people, and I think I'm talking to the right people here. There is always this belief that people are harboring, especially those in the global north, who believe that Africa is of no good to produce any knowledge. They say they are the only ones who produce knowledge. So this is another debate. With participatory action research, it says ordinary people on the ground know they are also knower. They are the ones who can also produce what we know today. They are also owners of knowledge. They are also the ones who can also generate new knowledge. Remember, when we do research, we kind of produce knowledge that was not there. Look at the process that we had during the COVID-19. There was a collective kind of people in all spheres, whether in health, whether in community, to come up with ways of saying, how do we deal with this thing which is actually killing human beings? So everybody was out there to find ways of dealing with that kind. And a lot of people can tell you stories to say what happened. They can tell you how they were able to survive. So a lot of things were taking place. So knowledge generation is not only a certain group of people who can do that. Everybody, that is what participatory action research is emphasizing. It's emphasizing that every person, even the one that you think is useless, can also produce knowledge. They can also come up with new knowledges. So that is what drives the participatory action research process. Remember, some people see it as a methodology. However, the practitioners of participatory action research believe that it is a process. We'll talk about that later on. It is a collaborative at every stage. It involves discussion. It involves pooling skills and working together. You can imagine if we can pool our, different skills together and brought them to work towards a common thing, how successful we would be. There's so many people who have got ways of, knowing, or skills or ways of doing things. So PAR emphasizes a collaborative kind of process where we bring all our skills together and do it for the common good. So that is basically that. It is also intended to results to something. Now, action research is a different kind of research approach, in the sense that there is intention to take an action. So once you do participatory action research, there must be an intention to change the situation. If you're a teacher and then they realize that your learners are failing, in a participatory action research, people would come together and sit together to say, let us observe how this teacher is teaching. How does he approach his class? And find out what could be the reason that causes the learners to fail. Because the interesting part with teaching is that if learners fail, nobody is to blame except the teacher. If learners fail, nobody is to be blamed except the teacher, because the teacher is believed to be the one who can make them to learn. So you can teach, but the question is, whether are they learning? So the teacher must always be constantly searching to say, how do I make them learn? How do I influence them to learn? How do I change the situation in order to improve the results that we have? So there are many ways that people would be involved in. So the intention in this process, it's more of kind of intention to improve the issue that you are researching. Shall I pause here for 2 seconds, maybe expecting if there is any questions? Doctor, if you are around, you can assist.
Yes. Thank you very much, Prof. For now, it's only comments, but no specific questions, Prof.
No, thank you. So then I can continue.
Yes, Prof.
Thank you so much. Now, let's look at the key components of participatory action research. One of the components of participatory action research is to focus on change. So anybody who says he's involved in the process of participatory action research, we would want to see the change. If you do the research on participatory action research, the intention should be clear on what is it that you are changing? What is it that you intend to change? Of course, it will also have a rider that says, is it necessary to change that? Is it for the good? Is it going to improve? So you don't just change things, you change things in order to improve them. You'll remember, for those who are from, like myself, I'm from the deep rural areas. We used to go and fetch wood to make fire. And through that, the cooking would take places. Nowadays, things have changed. Through research, we're now able to use even your solar, your sun, to make fire in order to cook. So through research, a lot of things have come in place. Who would have ever imagined that today you'll be able to talk with somebody looking at that person in a gadget? We never thought of that. So because of research, things have changed. Who had ever thought that, because we know teaching is a kind of personal thing, that today I'll be talking to you looking at the screen? Now things are changing every day. Things are changing every day. So participatory action research has got that intention to say there must be a focus on change. The second thing, it is context specific. In most cases, people who do participatory action research do not intend to generalize. The research is only meant for that space in which they operate. So it is based on a particular context. It is context specific. If we have a problem of people who are breaking in our homes, and then people come together and say, let's do an action research. Remember, in most cases, you want to see, why are they stealing? So the question might be, why are they stealing? Then the second one would be maybe to say, how do we stop them from stealing? Or maybe the second one might be, how do we rehabilitate them to see that their action of stealing is wrong? So it's context specific. It also emphasizes on collaboration. So key component of participatory research is to emphasize on collaboration. You don't do it alone. You do it as a collective. You don't come to people and ask them questions to say, hey, I can see you are 10 years old and now, or maybe, there's a complaint out there that people at those ages of 10 years are becoming pregnant. And then you start to go and, blame their parents or talk to their parents to say, how did your child become pregnant at 10 years? With participatory action research, they then look into a kind of collaborative effort, even the person who's affected by the problem. And in most cases, participatory action research is done by people who are affected by the problem. If I am a parent and experience a child who is uh, involved in, stealing, as a parent, I need to be concerned to say, I cannot allow my child to steal other people's things and even hurt them. In the process, when you steal for other people, you hurt them. So that is basically emphasizing collaboration. So people with a common problem can come together and say, Icon, let's look into this thing. Let's collectively look into this thing and address this thing. So it is more kind of emphasizing on working together. It is cyclical. It follows a cycle. You don't just use that, but you move into cycles. You first start by identifying the problem. Remember, any research that you do, you first have to identify what is the problem? What is bothering us here? So after identifying the problem, then you plan to say, how do I address this problem? Then there's a planning process. You set for yourself objective. You set actually your aim. Then you set your objectives to say, here are my objectives. This is what I want to do. And then you then move into action to say, I have identified a problem, plan around the problem, and I'm now taking an action to say, I am eradicating this problem. So participatory action research is a kind of research which is more focused on eradicating, removing the problem. Unlike other research, I do not want to really tap into there, but there are people who can do research just to say, here's a problem. They make us aware. They alarm that to say, hey, there's a problem here. There was somebody who was doing a research on yellow bones, talking about women and referring to them as yellow bones. And the question that I had after reading that study was, what is it that we can learn from the study? Let me not start to become more critical, but just to say to you, some studies you can question them to say, but why was the study done? So action research or participatory action research will emphasize the action. Then after doing that, you observe whether after taking an action, there's a change. So you observe to say, what are the results after my action? Here is somebody who is continuously breaking into other people's houses. Then we come together and we plan together to say, let's plan to say, how are we going to address this issue? Then maybe we say, our planning is to sit down in the dark and wait to see how this person is doing it. So we have a plan. We put it in writing to say, okay, so and so will be at that corner, this one will be at that corner. So by going to the corners, it's an action. Then we take an action. Then after identifying and seeing the method of the person to say, how does it break into the houses? Then we observe to say our actions. I mean, if you see somebody breaking into somebody's house and then you have planned around, understanding what is happening there, and you do not even take any action to say, hey, wena, tlohela go thubela mo tlung ya batho. Stop breaking into other people's houses. Then it means you need to check yourself to say, hey, let me observe my behavior. I was supposed to stop that person. So action research will then look at my actions that I took. Was it appropriate or was it within the law? Did I take the law in my hands? So you observe your actions. So after observing your action, you critique. In other words, you observe and then you reflect. Was that action appropriate? And then after that, then you evaluate. Once you realize to say, the action I took was wrong, then you replan again. You start to plan again, then you take another action because obviously your replanning will tell you you must now take a different action. Then you move again to look at you and observe your actions. And then you evaluate, you reflect on the whole process. And that tells you to say, what is it that I need to do? So from time to time, you do it over and over until that you get the best result to say, this one, I did the correct way within the law, in a proper manner, and I have come to observe that it does not exist. So that's where participatory action research comes to an end, only when that problem that has been identified has been eradicated. So one of the components is that there is liberatory kind of approach or expectations or outcomes once you do participatory action research. We can say there is an emancipatory kind of agenda. Now, there's this thing that I want to warn a lot of people. Some people, when they do participatory action research, they say they want to emancipate others. You can never emancipate another human being. Only that human being can emancipate themselves. Maybe I quickly need to tap on something just to say what do I mean by emancipatory agenda, which is one of the agendas in participatory action research. There was once a brilliant mind called Steve Biko. In Steve Biko, he was more observing society, how our society act, particularly the Black society. And Biko, in his observation, because he was more in the field of psychology, realized that Black people, when they see white people, they see themselves as less human being than white people. And this is something that is happening in the whole world. A lot of Black people when compared with another white person. And this you can hear in statements that Black people would say. Some Black people would say, this house that I'm building, it could have been completed if it was built by one person. There are statements that people say, and these are more kind of stereotypes that people say. They would even say, setlhare sa motho o montsho ke lekgomo. To say, in order to heal the ills of black people, you must bring in a white person. So all this kind, participatory action research has got a different kind of situation to say, no, no, no. You as an individual are the one who's able to liberate yourself. You are the one that has to be made aware. That has to be not to be made aware, but to become aware. And in the process, you can only then start towards liberating yourself. So that is the kind of research that is focusing on that one. So the scientific inquiry or the approach that is followed there, it's a deep one. It's a deep one because, it's a kind of process of tapping in your own mind, questioning a lot of things that you do. Why, when I am given or I give a 2-year-old toddler 20 rands, or 2 rands, then they run to the shop. Whilst other people from other societies, once you give them a 2 rand, they put it into the saving box. So all these kind of things are more deep. Participatory action research kind of tap into those issues. There are many things that you can talk about. I don't want to become very controversial on those issues, but liberatory issues has got a lot of issues. There are certain people in our communities who would wear in order not to expose their bodies. But there are other people who can wear in such a way they expose their bodies and observe those human beings. So it is more deep in terms of scientific inquiry, finding out why are people behaving the way they behave. Why are people behaving the way they behave? If somebody has been given money today, they all run to the shops. Why? So in other words, it is that kind of research which moves you into that kind of thinking. So the key components of that is that some personal or collective change happens. So maybe to kind of push more further, let's quickly look at a diagram of Skender, where he's looking at the key principles of participatory action research in order to emphasize that one. Now, the key principle of PAR, according to Skender, is that one, there is a commitment to the participation of ordinary people as co-researchers. Now, remember, once somebody comes across in our community and tells us that I'm a researcher, we're already afraid of that person. We see this person is powerful. We are afraid of them. And a lot of people don't realize that. Once somebody comes in, then we are told that this person is an MEC, you'll see them with big cars. Already they are threatening people in the community. People with big cars. Why can't this person come with an ordinary car? Like the rest. Maybe it's another debate. Let me leave it there. I know some people might become very angry with me. But all those issues in participatory action research are kind of vented out. The co-researchers, whether this one is at a particular level, as long as this person is within that community, it's the right person to play and participate in the research, particularly if that person is also affected by the problem that we are studying. So one of the principles of participatory action research, it's not to look at, powerful people only, to say only certain people can do research. No. That one is a different approach. It looks at things differently to say Research can be done by even the person that you think they are less important. They can also play a role in doing that one. The other thing that takes place in participatory as a principle is that there is respect for knowledge of all participants. You know, when people, you must listen to people who sometimes play in a space and they talk and they say, can I make a contribution of my small kind of knowledge? Who said that knowledge that they are sharing or that they know, it's small? So participatory action doesn't respect even the one that you think they are less important. You know, in the African culture, we had this thing of people respecting others more for being able to express themselves in English. Yo, ngwana ke o bua Sekgowa, o se ntsha ka dinko. You know, and look down upon knowledges that we have in the African culture. If you can look and listen to African people, they have artistic way of expressing themselves. And they even have theories, powerful theories, which some people look down upon. And research or participatory research is actually elevating them. For example, there are people who would have statements such as Marogasi pula musiki molelo. It makes sense. That's already a theory, but nobody put it into, let me put this into a perspective. So participatory action research researchers elevate that type of knowledges and even take it to a point of making it a clear theory for research. So all those kind of things are principles that drives participatory action research. There's also what we call mutual learning amongst participants. As you do the research or as you are involved, you learn every day. This that I know today, I didn't know it 5, 10 years ago, 2 years ago. But I knew it by being involved in what we call participatory action research. Because I started to realize, oh, there is also this knowledge that other people don't see as important. I've been trying to find out for many years what do my students mean when they talk about hashtag? And I haven't got a proper answer. Because when I ask them, what do you mean by hashtag? They would just say hashtag, what hashtag? Then I wanted to find out to say, please help me to understand what is hashtag. Then there's others who say to me, no, it means you're cool. Hashtag, what? So, you know, this is knowledge. This is how knowledge is being created. Nowadays, people would even, you know, use certain words which are now new and have now been put into our contexts. Every day we are now using. That's how knowledge is being created. So participatory action research has got this thing of mutual learning. You learn every day to say, as a participant, what is it that I learn from other people? You can even learn to understand how other people speak. You can even learn how other people create an environment of respect. You can even learn how other cultures have got ways of talking. You do not talk when certain people have spoken. Or you don't just say things without thinking. So that is the principle that drives participatory action research. There's also an intention to the need for marginalized, I hate this word, marginalized or disempowered groups of people. Now, there are people that are so-called marginalized. These are the people that tend to be forgotten. There are, for example, youth who are not in the employment. They are not in the employment. They are not having certain qualifications. They are not seen as employable or being given an opportunity to develop. But they are there in our communities. All these things, it's what participatory action research is actually tapping into those people to say, these are the disenfranchised. And they actually look into those people deeper. So participatory action research would then look into say, such people needs to be empowered. You know, there's this saying that people would say to you to say, in certain communities, if you are not working, and then there's a funeral in the family and you have to contribute something, people say, keep quiet. You don't have money. You're not contributing anything. Only those who put money can talk. So those are the disenfranchised people. These are the people who are seen as less important. They are just being sent around. So in a participatory action research, that principle is actually saying, no, 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 no. This person is also important. It's also so PAR has got this element of even making you to understand what is democracy. So they then look into those issues. That's why the emancipatory agenda of PAR comes out to say those who are disenfranchised can also begin to feel as important. So another principle which plays out in PAR is action to promote social justice to those who are marginalized. There is some kind of an element of fairness in their regards. To say these are the people also who need to be taken serious. So the key intentions of PAR, according to this, is that to produce practical knowledge, not just knowledge, but knowledge which is working, practical knowledge. So key to PAR is to produce knowledge which is really working, not just knowledge. What do I mean about that? If we know about people who breaks into houses to say what do? They come up with certain things, then they burn them, they burn a CD, then you get into deep sleep. You know, we know about that. But those people then who do that type of participatory research wants to find out more to say, how then do they enter into those houses? And they find out ways of knowing to say, what is it that they do? You know, that knowledge which is more practical, unlike knowledge that we only know that once you do certain things, you can be arrested. But they take you to a point of giving you more knowledge as to say what could be the wrong that you have done and help you to understand the wrong. So they bring practical knowledge, knowledge that you can make sense out of it. So by being involved in participatory research, you then also become to be aware to say, now I see if I do want to, if I steal from the community, if I do want to, then it means other people who come after me will not have a way of also using the same tools or amenities or that I have. Then the other aspect which is key is to take action that makes knowledge available. Now, there is so much research that we have, but some people even hide that in knowledge. They don't want to share it. Not with participatory research. issues of ethics with participatory action research are totally different. Some people don't even want it, they want to be known. But remember, in other researchers who have been told that you can't show people's faces, not with power. Power people can even say, I want to be known because I've made a contribution in my community. So don't hide my pictures, don't hide my face. So those are the kind of things that you'll pick up as you do that. But however, we are operating within a kind of bigger umbrella, which power must also be part of that. So also there's what we call transformative of both society for the individual who takes part. It also changes the society. Remember, through power, once you are involved, the intention is to change your views. I know in the African culture, there's this thing that people like, which they see it as, they even say it's African magic. So that's a nice science to learn, to say, how do they do it? But we'll talk, that's another one. So Pi is actually involved in terms of changing that, to say how people can change towards that. I've spoken earlier about the steps in participatory action research. Obviously, action research or participatory action research, it's cyclical in nature. And I want to explain this to say, once you have identified the problem, remember any research that you do, you must first identify the problem. Then with PAR, you plan around that. To say, for example, if I'm involved in participatory research, I have identified a problem. And my problem is that school principals seem not to be interested in the use of technology, and therefore do not encourage teachers to use that technology or to use technological gadgets. Example, we know in some schools, there will be the school principals who receive a donation of laptops. Then because they are good shepherds or servants, they take that laptop, they pack it in what we call the strong room or the safe room, and they keep it there. They keep it as safe as possible. Nobody must steal it. So in the process, because this person doesn't see the importance of technology, then the teachers also become the same. Now, there's a saying that says, the teachers of a school would always look like their principal, and the learners in a class would look like their teachers. So let's leave that one out and come up to this one. Once you've identified a problem, you plan around the problem. To say, maybe I can do what we call SWOT analysis, and then plan around team building exercises. And then once we know about these things that people are doing, then we begin to act to say, what is it that we're going to do to correct the situation? So then we plan around our actions. We put them down to say, okay, this one will write letters out. This one will do 1, 2, 3. This one will do 1, 2, 3. And then we look into that one. Then you come back, you observe. So in the observation, you check the one thing that we planned around this one. Was it done? Was there action taken? Yes, it was taken. Okay, no, it was not taken. What could have been the reason? So they observe those kind of things. And then after the observation, then they move into reflection thereof. To say, you then reflect on your actions and on what you have observed is happening. And once you realize that there was some kind of relaxation or things did not happen as we planned, Then you replan again. Then once you replan again, then you act again. Then once you plan again, you observe again. Then after observing, you reflect again. Then once that reflection says things did not go well, you plan again. So in other words, it is a tool that can be used to perfect a practice.
Prof?
Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm just reminding you that we have 15 minutes to go. Thanks,
Thank you
Prof.
so much. Thank you so much. I think we're still on time. Now, this cyclical kind and steps that we take can also be demonstrated in this manner, where we look at the first cycle, the second cycle, the third cycle, the fourth cycle, and you can do it over and over. So part does not come to an end. Participatory action research is not as a research that would come to an end. And I know now some people might say, if I then become involved in action research, it means I'm not going to end, to end, because there must be a point. No, you can continue, because with the writing up, you can start to say, what is it that I have planned, and how many cycles did I follow before writing up my study? But continue with the action. In other words, you will never leave that space if it's a proper and the correct way of doing action research. Having said that, I think I've preached enough. Let's bring in examples of action research projects. Here's a project of action research, and here it is a project that was done in curriculum. Example thereof is that the title of the project was a step-up action research model to revitalize service learning module. So here was somebody in curriculum to say, there is no, that figure in this service learning modules. How do I put it back into action? So a brief explanation just to give you a picture to say how one can do that one is that action research was used to revitalize and improve 2 service learning modules for first year nursing student at a university of a particular kind, the Free State University. And I'm saying this because this is a paper that is out there. One can read on that one on your own to say how it was done. So the 2 modules under consideration would include curriculum-based community development project, in which the student compile a community pie profile of subsequent striving towards addressing and identifying the needs and challenges together with the community. So that is a more kind of participatory action research. Yes, even if it's you who have identified the problem, you go to the community and say, I've identified this problem. Can work together in that one. So let's try to give flesh and understanding to say, how was the project undertaken? In a step-up action research model was developed with the intention to improve the quality of service learning modules, mainly by focusing on more thorough integration of services. Now, you remember people enjoy services. There can be different types of services, whether it's check-up services that are being launched in that community, whether it's services such as, doing kind of check-up and the learning and research, with the finally resulting in more suitable student learning and community development. So that is how the whole entire study was being done. And the research project has to demonstrate the importance of appropriateness of action research for development of higher education service learning module. So that was the intention in terms of that project. Let me also try to quickly pick up on the second one. This one was titled Youth as a Participatory Action Researcher, exploring how to make school a more enabling space. Now you will understand that there is things that are happening in schools, such as your gangsterism, such as learners, beating up teachers, or teachers also not, behaving well towards their own learners. So all these kind of things. So to give you just a glimpse of understanding how the project was conducted in this one, was that the authors explore and engage on vulnerable learners in rural high schools in a youth participatory action research. The process could enable them to take action to make their school a more enabling space. This article reported on the data generated by the participants during the first cycle of this youth participatory action research, which was to inform the planning for future advocacy through answering the question, how do youth perceive the current school climate? So that was how the project was done. And in the process, there were three emergent kind of cyclical which they perform. The first one, they look at the poor infrastructure. The second one, they look at the sports opportunities or lack of sports opportunities. Then they look at poor social and emotional climate for the school. And these three themes indicated that the climate in the school was not conducive to create a physical, emotional, social space for learning to attain. So maybe just to tap on the first report or cycle that they looked into was, firstly, they enable participants, particularly youth, to evidence-based, which is grounded further on action and tools to do so. Although not without the tension, there was a conclusion that powerful pathways to develop agencies in learners enable them to transform from vulnerable victims into advocates with the ability to influence positive transformation. In other words, they themselves now started to become people who were helpless, but rather started to become the ones who advocate for a change because they feel and they also felt that they are empowered. Their peers were also kind of influenced into then taking initiatives in conducting a climate of their school. Those are the kind of issues I wanted to talk to you about. And on that score, I want to say thank you for listening to me.